Hi, Heather here from Creative Kiwi. Thank you for joining me to watch this video showing how I make the large mandala cushion block and the hoop. Now, I do warn you, I create embroidery. I'm not very good at making videos, but I hope you do see how step by step, how easy it is to make this block. Please ensure that you do read through the written instructions that are included with the design set. They have more detail. Right, let's get straight into it. So this first block I'm showing you is repeated for all of the 4 corner blocks. So I'm just going to show it in detail this once. So where you stitch the outline onto your stabilizer, then you're going to place a piece of batting. I use a polyester thin batting, and you place that over the hoop and just stitch the next colour to attach. It stitches around twice just so you have a nice cutting edge. And you will see once it's stitched that there is a gap between the original outline and where the batting is attached. Now this is correct. It's just so we can keep the batting out of the seam lines. Makes it easier for when we're joining and when you're stitching your blocks together. So the next thing we're going to do is place our fabric. Now the main things you need to remember here is that your seam allowance is made from your fabric. So just make sure you place your piece of fabric over the guideline, but leave that seam allowance on the top left and top pieces. The other sides will get cut away, but you do just need that seam allowance at the top and the left-hand side. So then you're off and you're going to attach your fabric. Next step is to stitch the mandala design. This one sample I've used, I think, 2 colours, but I have created the file in a multi-colour one that you can use any colours or a really quick stitching 1 colour one. So you can see there the block's finished. So now we're just going to complete the block, which is just cutting away that excess stabiliser on the inner edges. And there I just cut away the stabiliser from the actual block, and then I'm just going to even up the sides. Now you can do this afterwards if you prefer. But there's our first corner. Now we're going to stitch file B, but it's going to stitch exactly as I've shown for file A. So the next step is to just get that block ready for joining. So while file B looks the same, it does have an added joining stitch. So it is important that you do stitch in order, file A, then file B, file C, etc. So I've just cut away that excess along the bottom and the inner, just to help you so that you can join. The important pieces to actually get accurate are just the little satin stitch. The satin stitch there, and mainly that little bit of decorative stitching. The rest of it will actually get cut away later. It's either in the seam allowance or it's going to be covered by the centre. So just match your satin stitches. Now we're off to the machine and it's just going to do a zigzag join. Now you'll know straight away when you look at this, when it's joined, you'll see whether it's caught both edges and if it looks fairly straight. And if it doesn't, you'll have to redo it again. Otherwise, you just off and we're going to do the decorative stitch that covers the join. Now the next block is exactly the same. You're using file C, but we're going to follow those same steps. You'll just see this after we've done this. So now you've got your fancy join done. Now again, we're just going to cut away the excess stabiliser just to keep it out of the centre. That side's going to be joined so we can cut right on the edge. The other 2 sides are the outside edge, so we're just removing the cutaway stabiliser and I'm just trimming back. And so it doesn't need to be accurate at this point. We're going to stitch file C the same way as all the others. And again, just get that block ready for the next join, the third join. Always joining along the bottom. And again, just you're looking to be accurate with the satin stitches, matching them. Off to the machine to do the zigzag join. Have a quick look and make sure it's captured both sides of the fabric. And when you're happy with it, complete that join. That was fast with the use of video. Nothing new here, just cut away that stabilizer, excess stabilizer. Now the next file we're going to use is file D. Now it has two joins, so while it's exactly the same as file A, B and C, it does have an extra join there. So we do the stitching, we clip away the excess fabric ready for a join. Now we've got two joins there, so the first one exactly the same as all the others, matching our satin stitch, and then we're going to do another one on that right hand side. Same thing, just along the top. So we're back to the machine, going to do the join the same as the previous, just along that bottom edge. Have a quick check and make sure that you're happy with it. Then complete that decorative stitch on the side. Now we're going to do that top join again. Now I would just recheck your tape at this point. Just make sure that it is still matching up your satin stitches, just in case. And when you're happy, we're going to do the joining stitch. And just that last decorative stitch over the decorative join. So that's the last corner we need to do. So again, just cut away your excess stabilizer. Now that centerpiece is going to be covered by the next piece of fabric, so don't have to worry too much about the center bit. The sides are your seam allowance, so again, they'll actually be stitched in when you join the blocks together. So as long as you've got those main ones, you're fine. So now we're going to load the center file. Again, like we did last time, you're going to stitch the guideline onto your stabilizer. Now, this is the bit you want to get right. You're just going to place your completed design over that guideline and just match those 4 points. You want them to be fairly even, like you don't want to have all at the top or all at the bottom. So you need to have where the guidelines are, it should be equal gaps. Now off to the machine. I don't like stitching over tape, so I remove it, but that's completely your own choice. Now it's just going to do a straight stitch join here. So no zigzagging, it's just going to be straight. And you'll be able to see straight away if you have placed your design straight, because there should be a similar gap. So if at this point it's not looking square, stop and redo again. Otherwise, just continue for it to stitch around twice. Now we're just going to cut away just that excess fabric for the center so we can add our batting and our fabric. But if you've got this up to this point, that's it. There's no other aligning required. You've done all the joining basically, because the next bit we're just going to place batting over the center, and that's going to stitch inside of that actual where you've cut, just so you've got a gap there. We're going to cut away the excess batting. And again, you can see there's a gap. It's just to make sure everything's out of the seam, to take the bulk as much as you can away from your machine. Now we're just going to add our fabric. And so all the actual joining's been done at this point. So now you're basically just going to attach that fabric and stitch your inner design. And again, the mandala, I think it's got two colours. I've done the two-colour version, or just a really quick one colour where it just will stitch in the one design, one colour. So there you go. There's your mandala. Now you could put a different design here if you wanted, rather than the mandala. We're going to cut away that excess fabric. And you're pretty much done, really. It's just a matter of going back to the machine and stitching that last satin stitch, decorative stitch, because the joining's all done. So there you go. There is your completed mandala, either cushion block. I would like to make a quilt out of it. One day when I retire, I will do a few of these and make them up, become a quilt top. And there you go. So you can see on the back here, if you're just going to make like a cushion or even a block, you've got the two lines on the back. So you've got what was actually the original placement line, and then you've got the batting line. So that gives you a guideline for when you're going to stitch your blocks together, because if you stitched right down the middle, you're going to not have any of that actual guideline showing on the front. So it makes it really easy to join. Now, I used my 8x8 sample, which was just the one thread sample, to make a 14-inch cushion cover, and wanted to just put a back on it, obviously. So I've just included a video on how I add or make the zipper and the fabric for the back in the hook. So I guess we start with cutting a piece of fabric the same size as your cushion, but with an additional 4 inches at the top. Basically, we're going to do some folding to make the casing for the zipper. So you can make your piece of fabric slightly wider than your finished cushion front and at least 4 inches longer, just so you've got fabric to fold back. The next thing will be to decide where on the cushion you want your zip to be. So, I mean, you may want it center. I've had it slightly more to the top. So basically, I've folded my fabric. You know, you can't see the bottom, but I've placed it from the bottom of the cushion to about where I want the zipper to be on my cushion. And as I say, that can be in the center, or it can be like what I've done, slightly up the top. Now, I did this for the ease of the video, to be honest, in a 6x10 hoop, which gave me about a 9-inch opening. I could have used, obviously, a bigger 8x12 hoop and got a wider opening for that 14-inch cushion, but for ease of the video, I used the 6x10. You obviously need a zip long enough, so I think these are just the dressmaker's zips, and you can see that easily fits the 10-inch. Now, starting the design, I've hooped a piece of, show mesh cutaway, and I've just stitched that first line, which is a guideline for the. Now, for the fabric that you folded earlier, you've got your where you want the top of the zip to be. I've also folded the fabric in half to get a center line. Now, the piece of fabric you're placing on that hoop now, that's the bottom edge of where you want the zip to be. Now, the fabric is actually placed wrong side towards the hoop at this point, and then I'm flipping it back over. What we're trying to do here is to center your fabric where the zip is in the center of your hoop. So at this point, the fabric is right side facing up. And so I'm just showing how I center the fabric in the hoop. Now, I just use pins at the edge. You could use a basting glue, just whatever you can. It's just to keep that fabric in place till we get to the machine. So I'm matching the center and center marks on the hoop on basically all 4 sides. We get that to the machine, and we're just going to stitch the next colour, which is, again, it's basically a guideline. Now, I've used a blue thread, so you can see. Obviously, you would be best to use a matching thread. Just have a visual check that it is fairly straight on your fabric. This is where we're going to place the zip. So if it's a bit wonky on your fabric, you may want to do it again. Otherwise, if you're happy with it, just cut out that centre piece of fabric. The next step is going to be to place the zip over that guideline. Now, I'm just folding the pieces of fabric just out of the way and just taping them. Now, the main things to remember with the zip is that you want to have the zipper head at the top of the hoop, and you want to have it away from that guideline tape. So you're taping it outside of that stitch guideline. So the head must be like that, and the same with the bottom, the metal part of the zip, as long as that is away from the stitch line. And then you just, as you can see here, you're just taping that zip in place. Next, we're off to the machine. Now, I don't normally stitch over tape, but I do sometimes in this case with zips. So it's going to do a straight stitch down that right-hand side of the zip, and you'll be able to see visually whether you've got your zip centered. If you've got, it's wonky, then stop and start again and retape it. Otherwise, if you're happy that when it's stitched down that first side, you can then go ahead and it'll stitch back down that second side. As I say, just have a visual look. And I know it's hard to see on here because at this point I'm using matching thread, but you will be able to tell. Now, if it's a little bit off, you're not going to see the zip. The zip's going to be covered. It's more just for you. But yeah, I mean, it should be fairly straight on the fabric. And next step is just to create, I guess, the bottom part of the zip casing. So I'm just removing all of the tape, getting that off the hoop. Now, you're going to fold up the bottom piece of the cushion. So just see how I'm doing it. So the opposite side from your hoop handle. And you're just going to fold that up and we're going to stitch along. And this is just going to give a neat edge for the bottom of the zip. Now this next bit, this is where you want to be as accurate as you can. So you can see you've got that nice folded edge down there at the bottom of the zip. Now you're going to fold back the top of the cushion and make a fold to make the casing that covers the zip. And as I say, this is the bit that you want to be as precise as you can be. And it really is just a matter of folding that piece down till it meets the edge that you've just sewn. And then, if you can, pressing it with an iron or just finger pressing and pinning. But this is where you want it to look neat because this is going to be, I guess, the top stitched piece. I'm just off to actually press that with the iron and say this is the bit you want to look good. Even if your zip underneath is a little bit wonky, it will be covered by this piece here. So this is the bit you want to have as nice as you can. So tape your fabric in place and then we're off to the machine. Now the designer is going to stitch from the centre of the cushion down to the bottom of the zip and then back up to the centre. It's going to stop. And we are then going to open up our zip. So you can zip that right down to the bottom now and no, it's not going to get in any way of your stitching. And again, it's going to stitch from the centre up to the top and to the bottom of the zip and back again. So that's your zipper actually stitched in place. Now, what I've also shown on this video is I'm just doing I've done a little handmade sign just to add another little piece of uniqueness. So this is included in the file and separate. So if you only want the zip, you can just have the zip. But basically, we're stitching a little guideline onto the centre of the cushion top. I've got a little piece of, it's a fake type suede type thing, a fake leather, and we're just going to stitch the next colour just to stitch it down. And you would need to use something like a leather or maybe a vinyl, a piece of felt. It would need to be something non-fraying. And then we're just stitching for this particular one. I've created uniquely handmade. I have just created it with just handmade. Just another wee touch to add. But I thought these cushions are going on my couch, so I thought they are uniquely handmade. Right, just to finish the back of that cushion cover, we're just going to cut the stabilizer away from the back of the zip. And just carefully cut away the excess suede or felt or whatever from the little unique sign. This next bit is where you can learn from my mistakes. You see at the two side bits, there is the where we've got the fabric fold. Now I always had decided I was going to use a little piece of double-sided tape to hold the edges in, or you could top stitch. And it really depends on how wide your zip is compared to your cushion. I use the smaller zip size, so there is quite an edge on it. Now, as I say, I thought I'd do that after I'd finished the cushion, but you should do that at this step. It is so much easier to tape a piece of double-sided tape on those edges at this point than it is when you've actually stitched it together, which is what I did. It can be done, I did it, but it's much easier to do it at this point. You'll see I just had it pinned there. So I've just made it hard for myself. Anyway, you're just going to put your completed cushion cover over top of that, of your cushion back. And as I said before, you've got two lines of stitching there. As long as you stitch down the middle of those two lines, you won't get any of the construction stitching attached or showing on your cushion. And basically, you're just going to pin right round the whole four sides and sew it. Make sure you have your zip. Now, with the magic of video, I have stitched all around those edges and clipped the corners, and now I just need to turn the cushion. Now, I missed getting a picture of me putting the cushion and the stuffing inside the cushion, but there you go. There is a picture of the finished product. I love it. As I've made this design for myself. I needed new cushions for the couch, so I hope you enjoy them as much as I did making them. Thank you.